At the edge of an international border, at the edge of the Pacific, at the edge of innovation, community, education, and discovery, you're listening to At the Edge of It All, a University of San Diego podcast where USD experts speak on topics and stories that impact you and the broader community.
I'm Cameron Zeck, and on this episode of At the Edge of It All, host Elena Gomez speaks with Ryan Keckley. He's the head coach of men's tennis here at USD. He talks about playing tennis from a young age and his journey to coaching here at the university. He also talks about how last season was the best season yet in program history. Let's take a listen.
So you started pretty early on in your tennis years as a kid, right? And a lot of that was inspired just talking to you of seeing your older brother play tennis. That's kind of what inspired you to get into the sport, right?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that. You just saw him and you wanted to do what he wanted to do, or?
Yeah, he was about 7 years older than I was. So he was 10, and he was a great older brother. He included me a lot. I was 3. And we'd always be wrestling around, whether it was playing basketball, playing soccer, playing football, some of my best memories. But he picked up a tennis racket, and he found love for it. And we lived about a block and a half away from 4 courts. And so in the summer months of Indiana, you only get 4 or 5 good months. We'd go down there and just spend all of our mornings and afternoons on the tennis court. And slowly but surely, you just kind of fell in love with the game.
And at 6, you actually competed in your first tournament, which is pretty young, I would say. I'm not familiar too much with when you start competing, but that seems like a pretty big deal.
Wild. Yeah, wild. But I had always grown up around kids that were like 4 or 5 years older than I was. That's just kind of how my neighborhood worked. And so I was trying to keep up with them. And my mom thought I was maybe mature enough to try it out over at Old Leaper Park in South Bend, Indiana. And I went out there. The match probably lasted 25 minutes. I played the number 1 seed, lost 6-0, 6-0. But it was a great experience for me just to get my feet wet and what a tournament setting was going to be like.
What do you remember most about your early years of tennis? What was it about the sport you think that, here you are, you're now a head coach of a tennis team. What has been sort of the through line since you were that 3-year-old, that 6-year-old playing the game?
That's a heavy question. Number one, my mom was just always trying to keep me active. I was just this crazy little boy, right? Just running off the walls, so much energy. So I think this was one way for her to just put me in a place and she didn't have to deal with me. But it also scratched my competitive itch at an early age. It's just funny. You think back on some of your memories, right? And shaping memories, right? One of my memories was at Leaper Park, and I had just come off the court. I think I was 8, and I was bragging to my friends, and boy, oh boy, did my mom put me in my place really quickly and taught me a valuable lesson about humility, right? And another lesson, I think that's the cool thing about the sport of tennis, or just sports in general, or all the life lessons that you have and that you can kind of come back to understand how it shaped you into the person that you are today. And I feel like tennis really helped me understand how to manage some of those emotions, and credit to my mom and my brother for helping me along the way too.
Yeah. And did your brother go on to continue with his tennis career at all? Or?
Yeah, he did. He got started a little bit later at 10, as I mentioned. So he went to the University of Dayton and played competitively there, Division I for 4 years, had a wonderful experience. But starting at an earlier age and just having an older brother that I always could compete with, I was always playing up. And they always say, if you ever want to, get really good at something, take a look and find someone that's a little bit better than you and just practice. And that's essentially what I did. And I remember beating my brother when I was 12 in a baseline game for the first time. And I remember the court we were on. I remember everything. And it was like the first time I had passed him, and I was 12, and I think he was 19. So.
Wow. Very cool.
Yeah.
So from the 6-year-old self who was competing in their first tournament, where did tennis take you? Did you play throughout high school, college? Tell me about your tennis career.
Yeah. So it starts local, right? Just to try to, again, play tournaments, experience those different things. And once you get out of the city and you start beating everyone within the city confines, you can start spreading your wings a little bit and go to the state, right? So I did that, and I started beating everybody in my age group in the States, probably around the 12, 13, 14. And then you spread a little bit farther and you go all the way across the Midwest. Right. And as a parent right now, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, my mom and dad, the number of Holiday Inn Expresses we probably stayed at, over the course of time, and the money they put in. But then about 15, 16, you start getting good enough where you're top, 2 or 3 in the Midwest. And so you start to go nationally. And I never went internationally. Within the United States, there was enough competition. But I remember going out to California. I remember going to Arizona for winter nationals. I remember going down to Florida for clay courts. So you just have these different experiences throughout the course of your adolescence. And it got me to see the United States, because growing up in South Indiana, growing up anywhere, you play the video games, you see Chicago and you see Boston and you see New York, but you have no idea the personalities and the culture behind it. So it was very eye-opening for me to just experience these different cultures along the way.
Nice. And so you ended up going to Notre Dame where you studied marketing, but also your tennis career there, what I was reading was you were the third most double victories in their history, right?
Yeah.
So tell me how are you balancing, first of all, this awesome tennis career and then your classes in marketing? And was marketing kind of what you were thinking you were going to do next once you got out of tennis?
Yeah. So growing up in my household, sports was huge, but education came first. So I knew I wanted to use, I think I was top 20 in my class of like 200 people. And so I knew I could get into Indiana and Purdue just on my own. So I wanted to, with my tennis, get into a school that might be a little bit of a reach. So I looked at Northwestern, I looked at Notre Dame, I looked at Virginia, and I really connected with the head coach. So I'm more of as a father figure, someone that could keep me in line. Again, going back to those life lessons, those messages that you learn. And so Notre Dame kind of fit, right? And I really wanted to get away. I actually very much disliked Notre Dame. Growing up 5 minutes away, I could hear the stadium right from my backyard.
Yeah.
So, and there's always a perception of Notre Dame students. And I wasn't quite sure I wanted to fit into that mold. But going and checking out the campus and just seeing everything, I was like, man, how do I turn this down? Right. So I ended up at Notre Dame. Lovely time, a great time, great friends, teammates, coaching staff, everything was fantastic. But I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I started out in pre-med business and quickly, I think within 4 weeks, realized I couldn't pass biology. So I just didn't have time. Found myself at the library at like 3 a.m. and I had practice at like 6:30 the next day. I was like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to manage? So I dropped the pre-med business and just focused in on business. And again, that's what I think is funny. You're 18, 19, 20, you're expected to know what you want to do, what you want to study. I had no idea what I wanted to do. Right? At age 28, I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Right? But I found marketing interesting. I knew finance and accounting would be a little bit more relevant. But I could manage my time accordingly with the marketing. So that's the direction I went.
Okay. And so you were still competing though, because you're saying you're still studying until 3 a.m. You're doing tennis at 6 a.m. You're
Yes.
kind of balancing both worlds.
Yes.
So after all of that, you ended up getting a job at News Corp. Was that in sales, I believe?
Yes.
How did you just drop tennis completely after having this history-making season? How do you just kind of go to a desk job, I guess?
It was
What was
really
that
hard.
like? Yeah.
So our senior year, we actually finished top 5 in the country. We had a wonderful team. We made the round of 16, lost to USC in Athens, Georgia. I was last match on, had nightmares about the match for 3 months afterwards, right? And then I had to have ankle surgery. And so there was always a thought of trying to go pro, but it was pretty unrealistic, looking back at it. So I felt like I just needed to kind of get on with my life and take some of the lessons that I learned at Notre Dame and apply them to my everyday life. But one thing I didn't realize was how much confidence tennis gave me over the course of my adolescence, right? Adolescence still being even 22,
Yeah.
right? And then all of a sudden you're stripped from tennis, you're stripped of that confidence. And you go into this new working world. You'd always been a big fish in a small pond, and now you are a very small fish in a very big pond. So trying to find your role, in the first year or two, it was a challenge, marching the day in, day out. I remember taking 2 buses and a train to get from, my house, I was living in Chicago, to the office. And it was just like the hustle, the bustle, the grind, which I liked, but it got very stale very fast.
Yeah.
Because tennis, you were always it was always different, right? You were picking up and leaving to go to a new city or a new university, or you had something to look forward to.
A new opponent, you don't know what they're going to do.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
There was something very unique about that. And then all of a sudden it's just Monday's the same, Tuesday's the same, Wednesday's the same.
Yeah.
You just find yourself banging your head against the wall. But tennis taught me work ethic, taught me tennis time management. So many countless things. And so I was able to put forward those life lessons to my new job, and I found success with it, right? But I didn't find my passion.
Yeah.
And that's where I kind of got into a rut after year 2. You're asking like the big question. I was like, is this really what I want to do? Like, is there something else out there for me? And this is when the USD opportunity turned up.
Yeah. So how did that happen? You're at your job doing the grind, you're doing it, but you're looking for, okay, what's next? Did this just pop out of the universe, or what happened, this opportunity at USD?
It did. I've always been kind of a go with the flow guy. I've always focused on just putting one foot in front of the other, not even knowing that I was focusing on putting one foot in front of the other. I just talked about controllables versus expectations. Controllables are things that you can manage on a day-to-day basis that you have control over. And expectations, I feel like sometimes can get in the way when you have these lofty goals. They seem impossible to get to. But this opportunity that popped up, I was sitting in my office, and a guy named Brett Macy, who was the head coach at the associate head coach at USC, had just got the job at the University of San Diego. And he gave me a call and he said, hey, I remember you from your Notre Dame days. Do you have any interest of coming out for $30,000, 9-month, no benefits, and being the assistant coach? And I think it took me about 15 minutes to say yes. Wild. Just to kind of give up everything that I had started in Chicago to start something new. But it was an adventure, right? And I was craving something out of the ordinary. How
old are you at this point?
I'm 25.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and I had family in Chicago, friends, high school friends, college friends. I mean, the life was incredible. The city is amazing. And I hadn't really spent much time in San Diego. So this was a big life move, big life change. And I just kind of wanted to take the risk and fly.
So what was that like? You started up, and were you just enjoying it? Because at that moment in life, you were kind of feeling like looking for your passion.
Yeah.
And did you find it when you came here and you started getting on the ground and coaching? Because you had never done that before, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I thought was so challenging is like, I mean, you go to school for marketing and you have a little bit, like you go into the real world and you still don't know what you're doing, right? They're teaching you everything on the spot. But you come into this role and it's almost like an apprenticeship, right? You're learning everything from your boss. And I remember there was three things I remember. Number one, sitting outside and doing work by the University of San Diego pool in December and calling my friends and be like, guys, you have no idea. Like, this weather's amazing out here. You can be outside year round. Number two, calling them, and they were asking about the job. And I'm like, you're just playing recess all day. That's all you do. You coach tennis, you play tennis, like you go play kickball, you go play soccer, you go play, and it's evolved a little bit more from that.
Yeah.
And the last message it was a hard message. I remember Brett telling me we used to drive down from Carlsbad every day because he set me up over in Cardiff, and he'd pick me up on the way. And I'm like, it's 2 months into it. I'm like, man, I'm not getting this. I'm not seeing it the way you're seeing it. And I remember him saying, not everybody's meant to be coaches. It was like some tough love, like we were talking about. But slowly and surely, you started picking it up. And you started understanding your roles and your responsibilities, and you started owning it and wanting to see if you could make a career out of it.
So you've been at the university for 10 years as head coach.
Yes.
What have you been learning along the way? Over 10 years, like you said, you're kind of learning it as you go. I'm sure when you were in tennis, there were certain things you enjoyed about what your coach brought to you. I know you said you kind of wanted that fatherly figure to kind of help you and guide you. You're pulling from all of these things of being in tennis for so long. How has that evolved into who you are as a coach?
Yeah. There's two things I value the most, work ethic and character, hands down. And so when I'm making decisions on a daily basis, I'm looking at what characteristics I truly believe in, and I will make my decisions based off of that, right? So, 10 years worth of lessons. The first thing that I came in thinking about was I'm not going to get outworked. If I fail, Kai Snyder gave me this opportunity, and I could not be more grateful, could not be more thankful, right? 30 years old, got a head coaching gig, and I just said, I'm going to put my head down and I'm going to work. I might fail, but it's not going to be because of my lack of effort. So I was in the office at 7 a.m. I was leaving the office at 8 p.m. every day, and I just grinded. I grinded away trying to figure it all out. from scholarship allotment to scheduling to fundraising to team management to leadership roles. I just wanted to research and learn it all. And I've been through a couple of cycles now. One thing that I do know is obviously you got to invest in your people, right? Investing in your people is probably the most important thing. And recruiting is one of the biggest components of this whole thing. But my question is, how do I judge somebody if I'm recruiting internationally, which I do, right? How do I judge somebody, their character and their work ethic just over the course of a phone call?
Yeah.
It's really hard, right? So I try to get on that phone with those individuals as much as I possibly can. I try to talk about their parents. I try to talk about them. I try to talk about their siblings, their day-to-day, what they like to do, how much interest they have in tennis. In my first year, I know I'm kind of rambling right now, but my first year, it was a really hard year. We had a very talented team. Tennis was off the charts, but I didn't feel like we were in sync as a team. I didn't feel like we had the right values instilled in the program, right? And I ended up losing 5 guys because they graduated. 2 guys they kicked off. They just weren't focused. They were doing the wrong things. And so I was left with 3 players. So I had to go recruit an entire new team, right? Which is really hard to do in the 11th hour, right? I pretty much had 9 months to recruit an entire new team. Oh. And I went way too far into the character side of things. I didn't recruit enough talent. But the thing is, they love tennis. And that's something that I learned really fast is you got to recruit guys that love tennis. And so after year 2, we were 47 in the country, not very good. Year 3, 36. Okay, we're getting somewhere. Year 4, we finished top 25, right? With the same guys that I had brought in that didn't have quite the talent. So when I went through my next recruiting cycle, I started asking the question of, well, what if I just up the talent a little bit now and see what we can get? And this was all around kind of that COVID era. So the transfer portal opened up. I'm not sure how familiar you are with the transfer portal, but so everyone was kind of looking left, okay, well, what can I get for the transfer portal? Like these plug and plays. And I still wanted to do it the right way. I still wanted to have 4 years with these individuals so you can shape them into who they need to be in the first 2 years and really maximize their tennis and productivity those last couple of years. And that's essentially what I did. So everyone's looking at this transfer portal. I went out and recruited character, work ethic, talent, right? Coming from great kids. And that next year we finished 28 in the country with pretty much all freshmen. The next year following, 19 in the country. This past year we finished top 10, right? So I didn't sacrifice on the character spot. I didn't sacrifice on the work ethic spot. And I'm not 100% on my hit rate, right? But pretty close.
Yeah.
And when you can invest in the people and get the right kind of characters surrounding your program, man, the sky's the limit. And this is essentially what we've done. And plus, here's the other thing. It makes work fun, right? I just didn't make enough money to come to work and bat my head against the wall trying to manage egos, right? All to be top 40 in the country. It doesn't make sense to me. I'd rather be top 40 in the country with people I want to be around every day. Because I wake up and I'm excited to go to work. Like I have one of those rare jobs that like I'm fired up. I don't mind working 7 days a week. It doesn't bother me. I love it, right? Because I get a chance to do what I love and I get a chance to make a difference in somebody else's life. Like, it's fantastic. But you want to make sure that you're helping people that are loyal to you, that are loyal to the university, that are loyal to the program and loyal to each other. And that's what we really found. And that's what was so unique about this past year.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. What are you most proud of in just the last season? I think all eyes have been sort of watching the great work you're doing. And I think your system has paid off of just recruiting really talented, ambitious students. But tell us just about the last year and some of the wins.
Honestly, it was just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And you knew you had something special because you had a bunch of juniors and seniors. And I always say it takes 2 years to get good. Right? It does, because there's this onboarding process. And the onboarding process is real. These individuals are coming from all walks of life. Great Britain, India, Netherlands, Germany, some places in the United States. They're all coming here and you're trying to get them to be a team, a unified team that like each other, that want to work towards a common goal. And that's a challenge in itself. But when you have a bunch of juniors and seniors, you've already put in the work the first 2 years. And so you just start letting them cook, right? And every day, they understand the expectations and they understand the standards of what is necessary in order to be great. You're not trying to be good, you're trying to be great, right? And you can you can create the environment in order to let them fly, right? But that inner motivation is really important. And that's what we had with each one of the guys. They were motivating themselves not only to get better at tennis individually, but to put USD on the map. And I just think that work, that day-to-day standard that they hit in order to achieve what we achieved, that's what I'm probably most proud of. Because we talk about it all the time. Like, the winning's done in the weeks, the months leading up to the matches, right? When everyone's taking a day off and you're sitting there on a Friday and you'd rather be at the beach and you're working as hard as you are and you're asking for extra reps, that's when the winning's done. So when we're sitting there and we're down 3-2 at Baylor and you got 1,000 people shouting at you and Neo Niedner is down 4-0 in the third and he comes back to win 7-6 in the third. And at the same time, Savi is playing on court 3 and he's cramping. He's literally cramping. He can't move, but the other guy can't move either. So the question is, who's going to last longer? You know, and he's looking across and seeing all of his teammates, and you got one of my team captains massaging his legs, and you get across the finish line there. It's like, how can you not be excited about that, right? And you go to national indoors for the second time in school history after going to Florida State and beating Florida State in 40-degree temperatures. You fly back to Baylor. You're playing Duke first round. Duke's got $500,000 in their NIL collective, right? And it's the last match on. The freshman blows match points, ends up going into the third set and ends up winning 7-5 off a tight overrule. I mean, just like the drama that was associated with this season was incredible. Going into UCLA for the first time ever, have it coming down to one of my other captains, Deion Clausen. Last match on, 5-3 in the third set. He ends up clinching the match to win 4-3. First time ever we get a win in Westwood over UCLA. I mean, just the number of those moments that we had in the season, it's why my hair is gray.
Yeah,
right?
I'm like, right. This sounds very intense. Yeah,
but it was just, you walk away from it. It's like, you breathe a sigh of relief, but it's also like, man, we got something special going here. Because I just rattled off 3 different matches of top 25 wins, all coming down to the last match, and all 3 different people.
Wow.
So they started to buy into it. They started to believe. And that's when they started to look around like, holy moly, we actually might have something going here. You know, but I knew it in September and October because of how they were working, how they were gelling. They eat together, they live together, they study together, they play hard together. You know, so we had created this culture of work and created this culture of, like I talked about, character, of just the Midwest characteristics, and I'm blanking on the word, values that my mom and dad instilled in me. I just took it out to Southern California and talk about how this is our family, right? And we're going to do everything in our possibility to keep this in our family and work to achieve some of our goals.
Awesome. Well, as we wrap up, what are you hoping for in the next season? What you shared here is it's working. So I imagine you're going to kind of keep this thing working, but any thoughts leading into the next season when that gears up?
First off, pay attention to Ali Tarvit. He is incredible. He'll probably be one of the top 5 best tennis players in college tennis. Come on out to the matches. He's so much fun to watch. How much passion he plays with is incredible. But we're bringing on 3 newcomers and excited for that onboarding process and excited to get them gelled into the culture of what our family is all about. And, you know, I think we'll probably be preseason ranked top 10. But that's a number, you know, and those expectations, they don't buy you to wins. We're going to have to continue to push forward and work to create that same standard for success.
Awesome. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. And if you like this episode, be sure to subscribe to catch our next one.